It's been a real joy to be part of this commission. Families really matter. I see that as a bishop. I hear about it in my diocese day in, day out, week in, week out, and I see amazing stuff happening through local churches, through the local community. As family hubs are developing, we're engaging with delivery in those settings. Family really matters, but that therefore means relationships really matter, because it's about how parents get on with children, how children get on with their parents, how siblings get on. But one of the things we've learned, of course, is that family is seen by virtually everyone as much bigger than that. It's aunts and uncles, it's friends, it's the neighbours, it's the grandparents. So those relationships matter. How we help and support those relationships grow and develop, and when difficulties really come, how we support people through those. We've got to help people discover that forgiveness is important. It counts. It's possible. That kindness, that love. Love is the word that kept coming through in all our conversations. It's the word that we hear in daily conversation. So often people mean different things by it. But when we're talking about family, it's love which is willing to give and give and give again, and not necessarily receive anything in return. Although, of course, we always do, because as we love, others respond with love. So this commission, in all the different ways in which we have engaged with people up and down the country, through conversations on Zoom, face-to-face, the call for evidence, as I experience things in my engagement nationally with issues of poverty, I keep hearing people saying, what matters more than anything else is to know that I'm loved and that I can love others. That's not an excuse for not tackling inequality and poverty, because we also learned that where those exist, they are so likely to damage and hinder ways in which relationships can flourish. So family really matters. Relationships really matter. Love really matters.
I do think that the community is a really powerful place to be. We've seen that work in Bradford, we've seen it in Newham, we've talked to people in other parts of the country and seen how working together they can achieve so much. I think the other thing that I've been very aware of is that the way we live our lives today is probably a bit different to how it was, say, 50 or more years ago. And what we're seeing increasingly is a number of people who are living alone. And one of the things we have looked at is the issue of loneliness and isolation in our community. That was particularly enhanced by COVID and having to be locked down during the pandemic. But people make choices about how they live their lives. And in all those choices, they have family relationships. They all need to be loved. We all need to be loved. We all need to be cared for in some way. And so I think as a society, what's come out for me in 2 years of meeting many, many people, young people especially, is to say that if we could be kinder, if we could be fairer, if we could be more forgiving and more understanding in our daily lives, then maybe we would be able to do more that would help the people who really need it. And to be able to just feel that everyone is valued, everyone has something to offer.
We had a social history and family law work stream, and I'm really sad to say that neither of our commissioners is with us today. Kwame Akufo, you'll hear him on video a bit later, has been away in Ghana having surgery, and so he flies in, I think, today and is just missing this. And Sarah Williams, who is a social historian and studies the history of Christianity, I'm afraid has been unwell for some time and is unable to be with us.
Then we had a work stream on children and young people. Sophie Jelly, the Bishop of Doncaster, Dr. Carol Kaplan, Director of the Transformation Programme at Northumberland Tyne and Wear NHS Foundation Trust, that's a short one, isn't it? And consultant in child and adolescent psychiatry, and Des Brown, the founder and CEO of Spark for Life.
And our fourth of the four work streams.
Director of the Transformation Programme at Northumberland Time of Year.
I've got competition, clearly.
And consultant in child and adolescent psychiatry.
You just said that.
Des Brown, the founder and CEO of Smart. Can we sort that out?
It's one of those days. The fourth work stream was about children. No, it wasn't. It was about couple relationships and marriage and the learning that young children have about relationships. And so in that work stream, it was very ably led by Esther Gregory Witham, who's there, and David French, who's there. David has spent a lot of his life leading organisations such as Relate, the Commonwealth Institute and Westminster Foundation for Democracy. And Esther, lovely Esther, has been working with children and families for something like 20 odd years. So we've had a huge array of talent around us. The last person who came to our commission meetings usually was Andrew Selous as an ex officio commissioner. Andrew Selous MP, who I think was a bit behind suggesting that this commission should happen. He's in Parliament today speaking, and so is unable to be with us. So that was our group, and then we were ably helped by commission, by secretariat members and so on, and I hope you'll all meet them over lunch afterwards, over refreshments. So we're going to press on, because I know we're running a bit late already. Paul, what do you think has been the most important learning of the last 2 years?
Okay, so everyone we spoke to, regardless of their age, gender, marital status, their family experience, or their family structure, whether they were a person of faith or without faith, talked about how important family is, without exception. Secondly, everyone talked about love and told us that we must talk about it and not shy away from doing so. And they highlighted that loving relationships are crucial to our health and our well-being, whatever our age, our background, our faith, or our gender. And that loving relationships enable us to live in community with one another. They increase our capacity to care for one another and enrich our lives. The conclusion we reach is simple. Families matter, loving relationships matter, love matters.
You'll be able to learn that off by heart, because you're going to hear it over and over again today, and then you can all go away and repeat it liberally. Our vision, which we think is relevant to people of all faiths and none, puts families and loving relationships at the heart of everything we do in our communities, in society more generally, and in our policy making. So Love Matters, and you have the summary report today to go and read, tells a very powerful story of opportunity, hope, and love through a number of key messages which we're going to share with you today. We do hope, however, that you will go away and read the full report, because that is absolutely alive with various people we've spoken to, their voices, the amazing work that is being done around the country. And so it has the evidence that you need to be able to go away and repeat that mantra. So, shall we move on to our first message?
Yeah.
Could we have our messages, please? Yes, okay. So our first message that we want everyone to kind of be able to embrace is about valuing people, valuing families in all their diversity. And we do that by putting their basic needs and their well-being absolutely at the heart of policy making and our community life, including religious communities. And why is that important?
Well, first we recognise there are all sorts of families. Just think about your own for a moment. As soon as I say family, am I thinking about my wife, because we're on our own? Am I thinking about my children, my grandchildren? Or am I thinking about my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, my parents who have both died? Yes, I'm thinking about all of them at different times. But I'm also thinking about some of the friends who are part and parcel of our common life as a family. They all count. So they all come in families come in all shapes and sizes. They're never static. They are constantly changing with the years. And contributors also made it clear that family can also describe a group of friends or the people they work with, some used, and particularly the faith that they shared. There is no one type of family, and there is certainly no such thing as the ideal family. Our evidence shows that every family matters because it should be where we give and receive love, where we can grow and be ourselves, where we can be confident about who we are and our place in the world, where we belong and feel secure and safe.
And family is also where we should be able to receive stable and consistent care. Archbishop Justin talked about forgiveness. It's where we can make mistakes and be forgiven and forgive others, because we all make mistakes. And it's where we learn to manage conflict well, because there is always some kind of conflict, sometime or other, in every kind of family. But we have to learn about trust, we learn to respect, we learn about commitment, and we learn about values.
The vast majority of people that refer to love as central and most important feature of being a family. But how often do we hear love talked about in any policy making? We think this should change.
We have visited communities all over the country, as we've alluded to earlier, and we've seen how churches and charities, local authorities and faith communities are supporting all kinds of families in so many different ways. And when we were in Newham, the Reverend Dave Chesney talked to us about supporting families in all their diversity in Newham. You saw Dave and I walking out of a cafe on the video a bit earlier, and we're now going to listen to him talking.
Ascension Church has been here since the late 19th century, and this was an area of great deprivation back then, and it still is. It was mainly used here for dock workers, and we outreach to dock workers. But when the docks closed in 1985, the community broke up, lost a bit of its identity, and in some ways is still struggling. This remains still an area of great deprivation, not just financial, but also education and health. So a number of the projects that we do at Ascension are aimed at young people, but also at families. And a couple of things that we do. One is the Garden Cafe you see behind me, which has been a cafe here since the 1990s, previously a greengrocer. And it's just a place of welcome, of hospitality. It's a proper cafe, so you can have drinks and food here as well. And more recently, we've opened it up for after school, particularly our secondary school, which is across the road, for lost hours, those young people who don't go straight home. And now between 15 and 25 young people come to the cafe after school every day, just to be together, to have fun, to eat. Today's pizza day, and also just to be safe. And so we know that actually when they leave this place, they can go straight home. Ascension Church has been here since the late 19th century.
We're determined that you learn the messages.
We are very clear. We must do everything we can to support families because they are central to our psychological, emotional, social and spiritual well-being. Well-functioning families provide protection and stability for their members, enabling them to thrive. And strong, stable, loving families are basically the bedrock of strong, stable societies. Our second message is to support relationships throughout life, ensuring that everyone is able to develop loving, caring relationships, manage conflict well, and promote flourishing of individuals and families. Jan, why must we support relationships in this way?
Well, I think we all probably know that the key to a flourishing, stable family life is not about a specific family form, as Archbishop Justice said. It doesn't have to include the dog either. But the quality of the relationships between family members is absolutely key to how we thrive together. Every family, every relationship has its ups and downs. And lots of everyday stresses can put pressure on us and on our relationships. But rather than being critical and rather than being judgmental and blaming when relationships are under stress, we should all be doing our best to support relationships to flourish.
So we present in the report a challenge for the Church of England, for the government and for wider society to provide the most appropriate support which fosters and enhances intimate couple relationships, that provides buffers against the stresses that inevitably challenge them, that minimises the detrimental impacts and disruptive effects of separation and divorce if couples part, and support must maximise the protective factors that enable children, young people and their parents to recover and thrive.
And perhaps one of the most important messages is that we must be able to support people to talk about sensitive, difficult subjects. So often we shy away from acknowledging the tough times which we all face, and we put it in the too hard to handle box, and we don't encourage people to share what is going on in their lives so that they then can be helped. And young people have been brilliant in telling us that they do want to talk about relationships. It really matters to them what goes on in family life. And so they have been very brutally honest with us when we've spoken to them in various places around the country. Members of the Family Justice Young People's Board, who've worked very closely with us for the last 2 years, have shown us how very important family relationships are. These young people play a vitally important part by expressing their view on the way in which young people and their families actually experience the services and support that they're given, particularly within the family justice system. There's 79 members. They're aged between 7 and 25, and they are absolutely brilliant to listen to. And so we're going to invite Andrew, as one of the Family Justice Young People's Board members, to come and talk to us now.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the Commission for having us involved in this. It's been a real honour. As she mentioned, we are a group of 70 young people with the Family Justice Young People's Board. We have indirect and direct experience in private and public law. And last year, our members came together and we put together some of our experiences and put us in a book called In Our Shoes. And I have the pleasure today of reading one of these experiences, and it's called Epic Day. Suddenly, one day my caseworker asked me if I would like to speak to our district judge. I jumped at the chance and kept my fingers crossed. For as long as I can remember, I had been telling everyone what I wanted, what would make me happy. But nothing seemed to be getting done about it. I was feeling really tired and frustrated. It was a massive weight hanging over me. My miracle moment came when the judge agreed to meet with me. I thought, wow, this is it, my proper chance to tell my story. On the day I was so nervous, but I knew the meeting could really help me. So I just told myself that yes, the judge is in charge, but he is also a person, just like me. I spent 1 hour with him. He let me sit in his posh chair and basically asked things about my life. I love tennis, gaming, and going to my local theme park, Drayton Manor. I've just read Animal Farm by George Orwell and enjoyed the political content, and my favourite film is the director's cut version of the Justice League. He asked what things I used to do with my dad and what my mum would do if I said I wanted to see my dad. It was so good to meet him. He wasn't scary at all and listened to everything I said. It felt amazing after the meeting. I felt so proud of myself and relieved that I had spoken to the man that was making the decisions about my life. Later that day, my mum phoned to tell me that the judge's decision was made. I screamed with happiness. I'm convinced that because I told the truth, he believed me and was able to sort everything out. My life was brilliant after that day. I'm very happy. I'm 13 now. I do have moments where I dread it happening again, but if it did, I would speak to the judge straight away, no hesitation. I would like to think that my story could give hope to other children. We all have a voice. We just need the opportunity to have it heard. And at the end of each experience, our members have wrote a key message to professionals. And this particular individual's message is, help us to meet the decision makers early on. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. We're delighted that Sir Andrew McFarlane is here today. And he has to go slightly early, but thank you for already indicating that you're very supportive of what we said about the family justice stuff. So, we know that the growth of love is the most fundamental need of every child, alongside food and water. The family is a place where we primarily experience being able to develop loving relationships, but of course we know that's not always the case. There is a positive association between strong relationships and mental and physical health, wealth, happiness, and healthy child development.
And a very vital component of a healthy relationship is recognising that as we travel along life's paths, and as our circumstances and our situations inevitably change, then over time we need to learn a new dance, as one of our contributors said to us. Individuals change, we all change, and so do our relationships. And so we have seen as a commission how important family is to Kwame. Just before Kwame joined us as one of our commissioners, he had an extremely serious stroke. It changed his life in a moment, and we're going to hear from him now.
Hello, my name is Kwame Akufu. I'm a retired professor from the University of West London. I joined the Commission as a magistrate of many years standing in the Adult Criminal Court and the Family Court. I am particularly interested in matters of human rights, equality, and social justice, and these were the areas that I particularly contributed to in the work of the Commission. One of the first things that struck me upon joining the Commission was that in our engagement with civic society, it became very clear that civic society is a huge resource. It has intensive knowledge and expertise around the subjects that interest them, and the Commission tapped into this expertise. What I learned at the personal level after joining the Commission was the fact that as a disabled person who was blind and in a wheelchair, that with appropriate support and the love of those around you, you can be the best that you can be and function normally. And this is a personal learning that I carry through in my work with the Commission, and I hope that this is reflected in the recommendations that we've made, that with proper support for the family, people can be the best that they can be. The report of the Commission is unique. Hello, my name.
Kwame contributed hugely to our commission, and it was because his adult children and his wife were willing to bring him to our commission meetings all over the country, were willing to read all our endless emails and messages every day, were willing to take down his own papers and send them to us, that he was able to make this commitment. And we really appreciate, I'm very sorry they're not with us today, the amount of work they all did to show love to Kwame.
We concluded that a fundamental shift in thinking is required to recognise the enormous impact of the quality of couple relationships on the well-being of adults and children. The Church of England, other faith communities and government have a vital role to play in supporting relationships to flourish at all life stages, during childhood, when we form committed partnerships, when relationships flounder, and as we get older. Our recommendations focus on the need for greater investment in relationship support for all couples to build and maintain strong, stable relationships, and when necessary, enable them to separate well, working in partnership with specialist charities, community groups, statutory agencies, and the faith communities.
So that's our second message. We move on swiftly to our third message, which is perhaps a little different from the other messages that commissions and other people talk about. It's about honouring singleness and single-person households, recognising that loving relationships matter to everyone. Paul, please tell us why this is important.
Single people can be very easily overlooked, but a growing number of people are single and not living within a family group or in a couple relationship. This may be through personal choice, It may be because they haven't yet met a life partner, or they're single through separation, through divorce, or death. We should not regard singleness as a deficit model, as somehow lesser than living in a family unit with children.
And of course, being single does not restrict anyone's access to being loved and loving others. And the vast majority who live alone are still members of a family. And the Commission is encouraging the development of a narrative which acknowledges the rich diversity of families, including single people and single-person households.
I'm now going to have a conversation. We're going to change tack. So Julie is going to come up, and we're going to sit on the sofa. Not sure, I need to press the red button to turn it on.
I'll do it for you.
So, Julie's been involved in thinking around singleness for quite a long time, haven't you? No, it's a red button at the bottom. Okay, there we go. Julie, can you just explain what we mean by singleness as a category?
Thank you, Bishop Paul. I think your opening remarks, in a way, give that sense of the diversity and complexity of singleness, that for many people it's not necessarily an explicit choice, that it's not a matter of explicit calling or vocation, but it is a matter of circumstances, maybe a matter of those sort of micro choices that we make in terms of where we live, the things that we pursue. But it's something that affects all of us, whether we're in a relationship at present or not. As adults, we will all spend some or all of our life as single. I know I have friends who might be married, but very often hit points of a kind of a functional singleness because work separates them. Illness might separate them for a season. So there's that sense of really expanding and interrogating that category of being single as not necessarily a vocational state, but as something that as human beings we have to increase our capacity to live well with. Looking at any census data of realising the rapid increase in single-person households. And also recognising the number of adult singles who are living in the complexity of multi-occupancy households. That's not just something that people leave behind after student years, but certainly in many of our cities, that's something that people are grappling with well into kind of middle age for some.
Do you think that it also means we need to rethink the nature of relationships, including intimate relationships?
Absolutely. I think very often we reduce intimacy to sex, rather than having a broad and rich understanding of intimacy that includes that emotional intimacy that many of us will experience with friendships over a lifetime. That sense that sometimes I think alongside reducing intimacy to sex, we miss the kind of intimacy of curiosity, of shared endeavour, of that person that we can turn to who really gets us, whether we're in a relationship or not. And I think something about broadening and deepening our understanding of what intimacy looks like and feels like, rather than taking a reductive attitude, is something that I think is life-giving and liberative for many of us. And I think alongside that question of intimacy is a parallel question, I think, of maturity. That if you're not married or you're not a parent, I think sometimes those sort of life markers are things that, you know, within churches, within other groups, that maybe you're seen as less mature because you haven't married or established a family of your own. But we recognise, actually, we all need good elders within our networks of friends, within our networks of churches and faith communities. So I hope that in expanding our vision of singleness, we're also able to value the wisdom of those elders and recognising we become those elders for others. So I think there's something cross-generationally that's really important about honouring that place of singleness and single-person households.
And one of the things, so one of my children is single. One of the things that he says is, I have far more time to do some other stuff that none of you who are married have, because you have to think about each other all the time. Is there something about the positive contribution that needs to be recognised?
I think there definitely is a positive contribution, which I think sometimes we have to also be cautious about not over-demanding or exploiting that. One of the curious role models I went back to in thinking about singleness was Jeremiah as a prophet, as someone who, at the outset of his calling, there was a presumption of marriage, of family life, yet he ends up being a single person who carries an immense vision for rebuilding society. And I think honouring the place that single folk have through gifts and skills that enable us to build up relationships, communities, contribute to the common good. And recognising that as singles, we don't do that on our own as somehow self-sufficient units. I think we look back at Genesis' vision of needing helpmates is something that isn't limited to marriage or couple relationships, but single people need those networks of friends, of co-curators, of collaborators, of supporters to enable us not just to be who we're called to be, but to strengthen the work of community building.
Please thank Julie. We're going to move on to our fourth message, empowering children and young people to develop their relational skills and their knowledge, to recognise their agency and to protect them from harm and give them the best start in life. Jan, why is the empowerment of children and young people so important?
Well, I think we all recognise that every single child should be valued, every single child should be loved and supported to flourish throughout their lifetime. And I'm sorry that the Children's Commissioner has had to leave us to give evidence to another group, but she, I know, absolutely stands behind this. So we need to provide children with the skills to increase resilience to stress and adversity. And we envisage that beginning at the earliest time in a child's life, and certainly the importance of the first 1,000 days.
We certainly need to enable children and young people to learn about relationships that prepare them for a future in which healthy, stable and loving relationships exist throughout their lives. And it begins by being fostered in childhood, through adolescence and then on throughout life. And helping them to recognise, understand and reject abusive and harmful relationships, especially those via pornographic websites. We need to be aware of and reduce the negative impacts of parental conflict, domestic abuse, mental illness, substance abuse, and child poverty.
And it's also important that we improve children's mental well-being. And parents and carers need support often. They try really hard, and however hard parents try to do the best for their children, there are occasions when that doesn't work. And there are some who simply cannot do that. And then they find themselves within our care system. Far too many children experience abuse and neglect these days, and some end up being taken into care. And Olivia is going to share with us another story from a young person from the Family Justice Young People's Board about being care experienced.
Hello, so I'm going to read another experience from our book. This one's called A Family Who Love Me. At school I was called names. People said I was weird, crazy and a psycho. They made racist comments about my dark skin. They said that life would be better without me in it. I moved schools, but by then my mental ill health was already severe. I didn't feel like I was part of this world. During my time in a mental health hospital, my parents were in court trying to adopt me. The local authority didn't want that. I still don't know why. I have the right to a family. They played mind games with me. I was told my adoptive parents didn't want me and that they'd given up on me. I was discouraged from the adoption. Social services and my birth father didn't think I should be adopted by two women. They believed a gay couple couldn't provide everything needed to raise a child. In court, they interrogated my parents for 5 hours. I was in hospital during the proceedings, and my Kafkas guardian was honest and open with me. She kept me up to date, ensuring I didn't feel alone. She knew the local authorities weren't being completely fair, and she made sure the judge kept her updated in case she needed to intervene on my behalf. When I was released, she made sure I was provided with proper holdalls for my possessions rather than the bin bags I'd been given. She fought for me and made sure I wasn't overlooked because I was in care. Without the support of my Kafkas guardian, my solicitor and my mum's, I wouldn't have gotten through it. My dog's Puppy and Tila helped too. Throughout my journey, I've endured a lot of mistreatment and injustice. I suffered from the lack of control and power. I was misunderstood by the professionals responsible for my life. The local authority never met my needs, and critical support for my mental ill health was badly delayed. I felt like social services used my vulnerability to their advantage, and I was neglected. Social services is still in my life, an aspect I'd hoped would end. Being adopted was the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. I feel secure knowing that no matter what the future brings, I have my family who love and support me. And the message to professionals from this individual was, don't let your personal prejudices get in the way of my best interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. We took what could be regarded as a simplistic approach to issues around care. We simply said, McAllister Review basically got it right. We support all his recommendations in full, and we agree with him that they need to be implemented at pace, and that whilst the government response thus far is welcome, it's too little, too slow.
So I think you'll see how the members of the Family Justice Young People's Board actually say how important it is to listen and hear what children have to say. Hearing their voices empowers them, it builds their resources, it develops their skills, and it educates us. And when we went to Gosport to visit the school there, we heard a really moving story from Adeshua. And I'm going to invite Adeshua to come and join us this morning. When she read this in her school, in a large classroom with a number of young people, do come up. You could.
Thank you very much. So we need to foster this culture in which the voices of children, young people and their families are heard within the church, within schools and within all the systems in society where decisions are being taken about their future. And in our full report we provide a great deal of evidence about supporting children and young people, and there's a significant number of recommendations for change in this area.
So we come to our final of the 5 messages, and that is very simple. Simple to say, less simple to do. It is to build a kinder, fairer, more forgiving society, removing discrimination, division, and the deep inequality for the sake of every family and household. In order to do this, however, we need to understand and address the issues of our time that get in the way of individuals and families flourishing. And we lay these out in some depth in the full report. Chapter 8 makes for some harsh reading, but it's really important that we read it.
So we have some headlines, but I want to say, please do read the full report. But I'm going to say, Elaine Stalkett and I, both, when we read chapter 8, both had the same response. This is the best summary of the state of the United Kingdom's well-being that we've read anywhere. So we honour this lady because she's the one who wrote it. So if you don't manage to read anything else, read chapter 8 as a summary of where we're at. As we emerge from the coronavirus pandemic and the disruptions we faced as a result of the lockdown and general upheaval, we need to deal with many issues that impact on adults and children. Here we go. Mental health, loneliness and isolation, being unable to visit loved ones, especially when they were very ill and dying, unresolved grief, loss of employment, and the whole business of children missing school.
And we are still living with the aftermath of a pandemic. Inequalities relating to the social determinants of health, including the conditions in which people live and work, were highlighted during the pandemic. We haven't included many statistics today in our presentation, but one I think is worth repeating. Since 2010, life expectancy in England has stalled, and the decade to 2020 was marked by deteriorating health and widening health inequalities. And people with mental health conditions are among the least likely of any group with long-term health problems to find work, to be in a steady long-term relationship, to live in decent housing, and be socially excluded from mainstream society. And we know a lot about cold and damp homes. That exacerbates health conditions.
Inequality and disadvantage go hand in hand. Inequalities between racial or ethnic groups are considered one of the most serious forms of inequality in Britain. Levels of concern about inequalities and discrimination have been influenced by our increasing awareness and understanding as a society about systemic disadvantage. This includes in the criminal justice system and in policing.
And of course, we've now seen poverty and the cost of living crisis come together. Family poverty and inequality are drivers of harm to children. And the numbers living in deep poverty or destitution have been rising rapidly in recent years. And it's reflected, of course, now in the use of food banks, which we hear about almost daily. There was something on the news this morning about it. And people from black households, families with a disabled member or a member with a mental health condition, and lone parents are likely to struggle the most with the current cost of living crisis.
And then you throw in climate change, the illegal war in Ukraine, refugees, and people fleeing brutal regimes.
So I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking to one of our commissioners, Des, because Des spends his life every day working with disadvantaged young people. It's quick.
Yes.
I probably can't get this. Oh, I can. Okay. I managed it this time. Des, you work with young people every day. What do we need to do to address some of the inequalities I've spoken about?
Okay, well, I've taken a few notes because I can talk for a long time.
No, you can't.
So I need to keep focused. That's why I've got the
2
notes.
minutes.
I think firstly, as parents, as carers, we need to acknowledge that the children are growing up in the world that we have created. And hence, that's where the responsibility lies for us. Steve Covey, who's an educator on leadership, he says, the world isn't the way it is, it's the way we see it. And it means that often our starting point is what we would call normal, or the way that we would see the world. But often we need to start with the way that people see it and journey with them. I think also to acknowledge the difference between inequality and equity. Sometimes there can be an assumption that everyone's starting from the same place, but they're not. And if we gave everybody in this room £5, some would think, oh, that's great, fantastic. Others would probably give it away or just put it in the pocket and forget it until they put their jacket on again and they find that £5. It depends what we need and where we're at. So we need to think about equity and also continue to speak truth to power in a constructive way, especially when we're looking at things around social and racial justice and being a critical friend. And one of the key things for me is being able to advocate for people, which means you're carrying their voice into a space where maybe their voice isn't being heard.
So if we carry forward what we have described, which is a kinder, fairer, more forgiving society, what would it look like?
That's a big question. I mean, a few thoughts on that. One would be a society where we take responsibility for the societal challenges, starting with our own prejudices, our own interjects, our own views, and I think there's a real need that we've got to start with ourselves. Often we can look out, but primarily if we're looking for a society to change, it starts with us. I think also when you're looking at a society where we all know what it's like to be forgiven, or we should know what it's like to be forgiven, with the view that hopefully that then empowers us to forgive others. and challenges the notion of what we can fall into sometimes, which is this self-righteousness. We feel that, we're all right, we are all right, and we've done nothing wrong, etc. So I think this real sense of being able to be forgiven and empowering us to forgive, a society where people in positions of power, of authority, and also people that have influence are modelling honesty, also empathy and love in action. And I think that's an ideal. My final point on that would be, if we're really looking for a society where actions speak louder than words. Because the truth is, you will know if I'm kind and forgiving, not by what I say, but by what I do. Because ultimately love wins, because love matters.
Thanks, Des.
Des, that's the shortest I've ever heard you.
Add notes.
He did well.
Des is a good example. He was a commissioner, but in the long report, there's quite a piece about the work of Spark to Life. And one of the things about the long report is there's lots of stories and examples of really good practice that we've seen around the country. And when we visited Newham in 2021, it was the very first formal outside visit that we did. We were welcomed into the home of Bakarate and her family. And she shared her experience of the challenge of belonging when fleeing from conflict. And we've asked her to read her story to you all today. Lovely to see you. You may not be surprised that she actually won a prize for that. So thank you very much. Looking to the future, we know that the UK is going to become increasingly ethnically diverse, which makes addressing racial discrimination and issues of belonging even more urgent. We believe it to be both a moral imperative and a practical necessity to find ways to be more accepting and kinder, and we make a number of recommendations around this.
So, you've heard about the headlines from our report. Please go away and read it really thoroughly and think about how we can put into action many of our recommendations, and then engage in discussion and debate about how we can take it forward. And we very much hope this morning has inspired you to do that. I'm very conscious of the time, and I know that the Archbishops have to leave at 1 on the dot. Bit of leeway? Bit of leeway. Brilliant. So before we ask the Archbishop of York to close for us today, I'm going to invite Chris to come up. Chris is the executive head of Gosport and Fareham Multi-Academy Trust, where we went to visit. Do come up. And I have...
Yeah, so I've definitely got the short straw here. No disrespect to the commissioners, but I think the voices from young people that we've heard this morning have been so very inspiring. So I think I'll just finish with a story. When I was a little boy, when my mum put me to bed, she used to say to me, "Stephen, if I lined up all the little boys in all the world and I walked along the line, guess which one I would choose? I would choose you." And I can still remember my mum saying this to me, and I felt and I received what I believe is the greatest gift that one human being can give to another human being, the gift and knowledge that you are loved, that you matter, and that you love and you matter not because of what you've achieved, but just because you are. I'm a dad, and I've got 3 sons. They're all kind of big and horrible now, but I've got 3 sons. And when they were little, I used to say it to them, only I'd have to be careful about the age categories. So I'd say, if I lined up all the 4-year-olds in all the world, or all the 6-year-olds, guess which one I would choose? I would choose you. And I think I must have said it a bit too much and debased the currency, because after a while, they started saying it back to me. So they would say to me, well, Dad, if I lined up all the dads in all the world, and well, guess which dad I would choose? I would choose you. And the thing is, when they said it to me, it still worked. In fact, in some ways, it worked better. Because you see, I know that I am not the best dad in all the world. I, like many dads and mums, are painfully aware of my failures and shortcomings as a parent, but that's not the point. The point is, they're my kids, I'm their dad, and what I want to give them more than anything else, I want to give them the knowledge that they are loved. And oh, what a blessing it is when they give that back to me. But we know, I stand before you as one so truly and richly blessed that I grew up not doubting that I was loved. But we know there are so many, thousands and thousands of people who do not have that. There's lots more we could say about this report, and I've been so inspired by it, I would like to say more, but you'll be relieved to hear there isn't time. I'm going to have to sit down. But it does occur to me, listening this morning to all the voices we've heard, it does occur to me that if family is more than mum and dad and 2.2 children, if it is about that intentionality of living together with commitment to each other in all the different configurations of our actual families, households, communities, societies, then surely we can commit to be family to each other by giving to each other that great gift of affirmation. So I want to say to the Commission, if I lined up all the commissions and all I would choose you. And to the young people who've contributed, blimey, you've done a good job. You've spoken to our hearts today and shown us that love and affirmation, they don't just matter, they make a difference, and they can help us build that kinder, fairer, more loving society we long for. One last little theological point. When Jesus was baptised, the heavens opened and God spoke, which doesn't happen even in the Bible that often. God speaks. Notebooks at the ready. This is going to be interesting. But what does God say to Jesus at his baptism? Actually, by the way, it does prove... is Dave still here, or has he gone home? Yeah, it does prove that God does come from Essex, by the way, this does. So, like, when my kids were little... perhaps language has changed there, but when my kids were little, instead of saying something was very good or very bad, they would say it's well good or well bad, and I would try to correct them to get them to speak, that was now the King's English, get them to speak the King. So, no, you must say very good. They say well good. But then it occurred to me that at Jesus' baptism, God speaks, and what God says to Jesus is, "This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I am well pleased." Well pleased. God does come from Essex. In fact, the Holy Spirit only speaks local dialects. But do you see the point? When God speaks to Jesus, he says to Jesus, perhaps we might even say the only thing he really needs to know, out of which he can live his whole life: I love you, you matter, I am on your side. Let us, through this report, make sure that giving and receiving the affirmation of love is at the heart of our pastoral practice as a church, the policy of our nation, and all the many good things that we are involved in. It's been a privilege to be here this morning and receive this report. Thank you, everyone else, for being here as well.
The launch is ended. The hard graft now begins. And we hope that you will partner with us in trying to see some of this actually turn into some realities.
And I would just like you to read what's written on the wall over there by Anne Frank. How wonderful it is that nobody needs wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. We can do it today. Thank you all very, very much.